For Your Ears Only for the week of July 21st, I'm David Alpern.
I'm Eddie Robinson.
I think George Zimmerman is a man whose heart was in the right place, but just got displaced by the vandalism in the neighborhoods and wanting to catch these people so badly that he went above and beyond what he really should have done. George had a right to protect himself at that point.
Justice! No justice! No justice!
Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago.
George Zimmerman may not have seemed totally innocent to Sanford, Florida juror B37, but under the law of self-defense, she joined the unanimous verdict of not guilty on charges of second-degree murder or manslaughter in the fatal shooting of unarmed black teen Trayvon Martin. That produced a week of demonstrations around the country, calls for a Justice Department civil rights suit, repeal of state Stand By Your Ground laws, and an unusually personal comment by President Barack Obama. He urged greater understanding of the black perspective after generations of racial prejudice that he admitted was still a fact of life, though steadily fading.
To put the verdict and reaction in context, as he did originally when the case first drew national attention, For Your Ears Only, we're joined again by Ellis Cose, author of The End of Anger, Colorblind, The Rage of a Privileged Class, and 8 more books on race and other social issues. Welcome back to the program.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be back with you.
What was your first reaction to the verdict?
Well, I guess I had 2. I mean, I was saddened, but I was not surprised. I never expected that Zimmerman would be convicted, so I thought it was a sad turn of events, and I think it's sad that someone who did what he did can walk away from it. But at the same time, I never expected a conviction in this case.
Some say the all-female, mostly white jury could not identify emotionally with Trayvon. Others say it was more that the law of self-defense just doesn't account for who begins a confrontation, only whether any party to it can prove fear for his life. What's your view?
Well, I think there were several gaps here. I mean, there's a gap between what many people consider wrong and what the state of Florida and other states who have these laws says is illegal. And I think it's absolutely right that under the law, it doesn't really matter what Zimmerman did, that he, by many calculations, provoked this incident and then shot a guy who was only responding to him. What matters is that the law says that he was justified in doing what he did by any sort of logical reading. But I think at the same time, what the president spoke to, I guess, in his remarks, is that there is a huge gap between what many African Americans perceive and what many white Americans perceive. And this is not new. I mean, when Gallup did its poll last year, they found 51% of blacks saying that Zimmerman was definitely guilty and 11% of whites saying that he was definitely guilty. The vast majority, or the majority at least, of whites were saying that it was unclear who was wrong and who was right in this case. And at the end of the day, I'm not sure that even a jury that was half white and half black would have convicted him. I suspect they would not have, because they were instructed to follow the law, not to follow what they thought was right.
The original protests were to force a trial after cops just let Zimmerman go. Some say the extensive proceedings did honor Martin's death, and that a civil suit plus endless fear of revenge may be punishment enough for Zimmerman. Others demand a Justice Department civil rights case, though it might be even harder to win. What do you think?
Well, I think several things. I mean, I think, one, there are lots of people who want justice in this case. And there's a distinction in what we perceive as justice and in what the law permits to happen in certain situations. And I don't think that the honoring of Trayvon Martin is going to happen through the justice system. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to bring a civil rights suit here. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I happen to have dinner with Ted Shaw, the former head of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, a couple of days after this verdict came out, and we were talking about it, and he said basically the same thing. It's going to be a very difficult civil rights suit if they do in fact decide to bring one. There can certainly be a civil suit which has a lower bar, and they may meet that, but at least the legal system is not about honoring Trayvon Martin. That has to happen in the political system, in the society, in the sort of social interactions of people.
What chance do you see for repeal of Stand Your Ground laws around the country?
Well, they seem to be quite popular. And I think that Trayvon Martin's case is not going to cause those laws to be repealed for the very simple reason that most Americans, certainly most white Americans, think that Zimmerman was absolutely justified in what he did. And the anguish that many African Americans feel is not going to result, in my opinion, in the repeal of these laws.
Some thought Obama's comments were right on about race and prejudice, even against a black man on a path to the presidency. Others thought that they were too racially one-sided and provocative as the controversy continues. What was your reaction?
Well, it's an interesting commentary on America and our experiences. The fact of the matter is that our experience with race in America tends to be one-sided. Obama talked in quite personal terms about his experience of being followed around in a store or a shop and other similar experiences like that. I've had that same experience when I was a kid, looking to buy my mom a birthday gift. I went into a store called Marshall Field's in Chicago, and I could not shake a store detective who insisted on hounding me so much that I ended up ultimately almost in tears and left the store. This is not the kind of experience that most whites have, and so there's very little identification with that. And when someone like Obama or anyone else for that matter brings it up, there's a sense among many white Americans that he's playing some kind of race card, and that he's injecting race into an area where it does not belong. And you saw that very clearly with the case of Skip Gates several years back, 4 years ago, I guess 4 years ago to this month, actually, I guess, when Skip Gates was arrested, in effect, in his own home. And Obama said, well, the white cop who arrested him did something stupid, or I guess his word was stupidly. There was a huge firestorm as a result of that, and overwhelmingly in the polls, whites thought that he had done the wrong thing, whereas blacks thought he had not. This is a direct reflection of the experiences that Obama was talking about.
You're a father of daughters, not sons, as I recall, but what's been your reaction to the talk about warnings that loving black parents have to give to their male teens even today?
Well, I have one daughter, and she's 10, and I've certainly tried to insulate her from these kinds of concerns to the extent that I can. But I think it is a reality that I've talked with lots of black parents, and I wrote a book about young black men. So I'm certainly very aware of the situation with them. And there is a sense that in many situations that could be read ambiguously, young black men are going to be looked at with suspicion. I don't think that most are going to be, in effect, hunted down and shot. But there is this fear, and there is this concern of how you act in these circumstances where innocent acts can be perceived not so innocently. And there is, unfortunately, in this country, which has gone so far along the road of getting rid of racism, there are still some unfortunate racial stereotypes that slap black men in the face.
Ellis Cose is the author of The End of Anger, Colorblind, The Rage of a Privileged Class, and 8 more books on race and other social issues.
Now, this quote from the news, only a pinhead would see the cover and think, oh, I thought this guy was a murderous monster, but since he looks so hot right here, I guess he's okay. That was Boston Globe columnist Yvonne Abraham on the controversy over Rolling Stone magazine's appealing cover image of marathon bombing defendant Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, though the headline did call him a monster for radical Islam.
Next, The View from Washington on Zimmerman and more, for your ears only.